this week's Vaticano. Pope Benedict XVI looks to the life and prayer of St. John the Baptist for a lesson in courage. Former students of the Pope gather with him to examine the theme of ecumenism. The parish priest nearest the papal residence at Castle Gandolfo shows us his newly renovated church. Lebanese Catholics look forward to a papal visit in mid-September. Meanwhile, back in Rome, Pope Benedict XVI's publisher looks to new methods to offer his Catechesis, and two of the city's residents work to assist Syrians in their time of need. All this and a peek into the Vatican Museums and their new spiritual guides coming up on Vaticano. At his weekly audience from Castle Gandolfo, Italy, Pope Benedict XVI spoke of the heroic sanctity of St. John the Baptist. A solid life of prayer like the saints, he said, can be a source of courage in a world hostile to God.
The martyrdom of St. John the Baptist reminds us, Christians of our time, that we cannot stoop to compromises with the love of Christ, with His Word, the truth. The truth is the truth, and there is no compromise. Christian life requires a daily martyrdom, so to speak, of fidelity to the gospel, the courage to let Christ grow in us and direct our thinking and our actions. But this can take place in our life only if our relationship with God is solid. Prayer is not a waste of time. It does not rob much space from our activities, not even apostolic activities. It does the exact opposite. Only if we are able to have a life of faithful, constant, confident prayer will God Himself give us the strength and capacity to live in a happy and peaceful way, to overcome difficulties, and to bear witness with courage. St. John the Baptist, intercede for us, so that we may always conserve the primacy of God in our lives.
John, whose birth was celebrated on the 24th of June, gave himself totally to Christ by preparing the way for Him through the preaching of repentance, by leading others to Him once He arrived, and by giving the ultimate sacrifice. Dear friends, may we follow John's example by allowing Christ to penetrate every part of our lives, so that we may boldly proclaim Him to the world. May God bless all of you.
Former students of the Pope were here in Castle Gandolfo for their annual closed-door meetings the first weekend of September. It was a chance for them to greet pilgrims, but most of all, to catch up with their old professor.
This meeting, this colloquium really, is a discussion group, a seminar if you wish, and it emerged out of the practice the then Professor Ratzinger had of collecting all his doctoral students at the end of the year, going with them into the Bavarian woods or into the Schwarzwald, the Black Forest, inviting some well-known professor, Rahner, Balthasar, Pannenberg, etc., to come and address us over the weekend about their research and their present concerns. And that really was the background. Yeah? So the format of our meetings has always been to invite, to have a theme, or an individual theologian or professor or philosopher, to invite them to us, to talk to us about a particular topic. And then some of us would also contribute, short papers. Then a discussion would ensue. One of the great characteristics of Joseph Ratzinger is his capacity to promote discussion. Yeah?
And it's now the eighth meeting we have with him since he has become Pope. And it's, I have the impression he enjoys. And we have the impression, not only the impression, but the conviction that we enjoy. And it's always, it's remembering as it was when we were his students, and at the same time it has become enriched with all his experience of 24 years CDF, Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith, his years as Archbishop of Munich, and now as Pope. And but he remains our teacher.
Il messaggio di questo incontro è
The message of this encounter was the importance of ecumenism, in particular in view of the 50th anniversary of the Second Vatican Council. Ecumenism and the Council are very closely connected. It was a very good encounter. At the end, the Holy Father voiced his appreciation for ecumenism, and he said that it is absolutely necessary to continue and deepen ecumenical dialogues.
We spoke about the meeting between Lutherans and Catholics, Anglicans and Catholics. And as he's very much involved in all these dialogues through the decades, the question is, what is the outcome? Is there real progress? Can you see a final result, the completion of unity, the achievement of coming together? And he said, no, the most important is that we listen to each other. We cannot do the unity, that's a gift of God. But the most important is for us that we listen to each other, that we meet each other in faith, and as he said, and I think I'm now really nearly literal, that we learn from each other how to follow Christ today. And that was so beautiful, because it gave such a input of hope for what we are doing in these dialogues that are often apparently without results. But if we meet each other in faith, then it is really a mutual enrichment in the faith of Christ.
Pope Benedict XVI will soon be heading to Lebanon. From September the 14th to the 16th, faithful like these will be welcoming him to their home soil.
We are very exciting and waiting for him to come to Lebanon.
The Pope's visit to Lebanon gives energy not only to the Christians in Lebanon, but to the Christians in all the countries of the Middle East. Because in Lebanon we have more Christians than in any other country, the Arab countries around us. You see? That's why it's so important to the area, not only to Lebanon.
At the Pontifical Maronite College, there is hope that the Pope's visit will reach across the faiths.
Questa visita del Santo Padre oggi è una visita molto importante.
The Holy Father's visit is very important. Why? Because first of all, it's not only about Lebanon, but it's about all the Eastern Catholic churches. It's to sign the Apostolic Exhortation, a document that was made after the Synod of Bishops for the Middle East. But the most important part of the visit is to confirm that he chose Lebanon, because in Lebanon many confessions are found, not only Catholics or Orthodox, but all the communities that believe in God. So the Pope's schedule includes 4 really important moments. The Pope will meet with the leaders of the Muslim community, and he will have an interfaith encounter. Then he will also meet with the Orthodox patriarchs and with Catholic patriarchs. Then there is a major event when he meets with young people, representatives from all of Lebanon. Then there's the finale, the Eucharistic celebration of the Mass, to be celebrated in the Cathedral of Beirut. This Mass will be celebrated in the heart of the city, where you'll see the cathedral right next to the mosque on the seashore. It's close to the place John Paul II celebrated Mass nearly 15 years ago. But when John Paul II celebrated that Mass, Beirut was still destroyed. We had just come out of the war. Now the Pope will find a Beirut, a city built up to what it was before. The scope of this visit is not only that Catholics are awaiting the Pope. I was in Lebanon 10 days ago, and I was able to meet with the organizing committee. Muslims are also awaiting the Holy Father's visit. There will certainly be many who await the Pope's arrival at the airport and drive to the nunciature. One of the Muslim leaders said, "We must welcome the Pope with the streets covered in roses. It's a sign of Eastern spirituality." So the papal visit is important for everyone: Catholic Christians, Orthodox Christians, Sunni and Shia Muslims, and the Druze. They all await the Pope with pleasure because they see the Pope not only as a religious Catholic or state leader, they see him as a symbol, as the successor of Peter and an apostle of peace.
It will be Benedict XVI's 25th international journey as Pope. back. You're watching Vaticano. Opposite the papal residence on Castle Gandolfo's main square is the pontifical parish of St Thomas of Villanova. As he does every year, the Pope celebrated Mass there on August the 15th. Though the Pope considers himself part of the parish, it's actually this priest who runs the place.
In 1651, this church was erected by Alexander VII, and here the Pope started to come in search of rest. Many have come here since he first did. The artist Bernini designed this church, and it was put near the papal residence so that the Pope would feel near to the parish. So the relationship is really quite close. Our Pope, Benedict XVI, feels like a member of the parish here. Every time he sees me, he says, "Here's our dear parish priest." And he feels the presence of the parish priest as a very important thing. This is something that the Council highlighted and something the Pope lives. So he wishes to be involved in the parish. So that's our closeness to the Apostolic Palace and with the Pope. So here in our church, we have some details that stand out and that are quite interesting. If we look first to the altarpiece, we see that it's truly exceptional because it's a masterpiece of Pietro da Cortona. I hope that we'll be able to restore it, or at least to clean it up. In the restoration work we just finished here, we didn't have time, so it will be touched up later, along with the other works of da Cortona. So let's have a look at the crucifixion, which is considered a masterpiece. Unfortunately, the colors have faded a bit over time, and candle smoke has also damaged it a bit, but it is still what it has always been. Those who see it marvel at this vision, which is a bit peculiar. If you take a close look, the women below the cross are in a triangular position. The cross is above, and Mary represents what it says in the Gospel. It says that she was petrified in her sorrow there below the cross. So it's not just a painting, but there's also a great theological significance behind it. Then we look to the side chapel here, where there is a depiction of St. Thomas of Villanova. Why St. Thomas of Villanova? I was surprised at this. I thought that I was going to be the parish priest of St. Thomas Aquinas, a fellow philosopher and a great theologian. Well, Alexander VII, who had this church built right next to the papal palace, because it was a point of reference for the Pope, had only just canonized St. Thomas of Villanova, who was an Augustinian. In fact, from the moment of its founding, the Augustinians were here. The Salesians, and I'm a Salesian, were called to serve here only in 1929, the year of the Lateran Pacts. Pius XI, who had known St. John Bosco, wanted the Salesians to have this church in service to the church and the parish community here in Castle Gandolfo.
On September the 2nd, Pope Benedict XVI met with pilgrims and faithful at his summer residence in Castle Gandolfo for the Angelus prayer. He spoke of the personal liberation of each person who embraces God's law and lives it with integrity.
God's law is His word, which guides man on the path of life, releases him from the slavery of selfishness, and introduces him to the land of true freedom and life. For this reason, in the Bible, the law is not seen as a burden, an overwhelming limitation, but as the Lord's most precious gift, the testimony of His fatherly love, of His desire to be close to His people, to be their ally, and write with His people a love story.
The Pope also greeted the pilgrims in their own language, including English.
The gospel of today's liturgy spurs all of us to greater harmony between His faith we treasure in our hearts and our outward behavior. By God's grace, may we be purified inside and out, so as to live integrally our commitment to Christ and to His message. God bless all of you.
Back in Rome, while colonnade renovations advance in St Peter's Square, improvements have also reached the Pope's publisher. They've just signed an agreement with Apple to create ebooks on the Pope's works.
It represents an enormous step on the international stage because, as you know, internet goes beyond space and time. The message of the Holy Father will now be received in every part of the world. A book compiling the latest Wednesday catecheses of the Holy Father on prayer in the New Testament has just been released. This will also be included in the series of electronic books being produced with Apple. All the Catechesis will eventually be included, and who knows, if the market continues to develop, we'll also be able to offer other books. This is the volume, Prayer in the New Testament. It's the 13th of the series, and it will also be produced as an ebook in the coming days. The illustrations are of great value in the electronic version, as the reader can access the book as they like. They can zoom in and out to examine the images and compare them with the text for their own personal meditation. So it gives them the possibility, beyond the paper version, to see better, to contemplate better the messages of these books. We'll do this with all the catechesis. They are splendidly composed books, including these works of art. So there are 30 or 40 works per book. That multiplied by 13 volumes makes a beautiful art encyclopedia and a wonderful path of spirituality.
With the first editions in Italian, the US Bishops' Conference is collaborating with the Vatican to bring the same books to the world in English. Welcome back. You're watching Vaticano. Here, in the silence of a Roman neighbourhood, the fighting in Syria seems a long way off. But for this Jesuit, it couldn't be closer to home. After 30 years of advocating peace and unity in the Middle Eastern country, he was expelled by the current government in June.
We have had 40 years of an authoritarian dictatorship, a totalitarian rule with a deep lack of respect of human rights. We have so much blood on our streets, so much people lost, so much of the people standing for freedom and democracy has been lost. We have lost so much good youth people. Such a tragedy. And the social relationships is more difficult now than what it was 1.5 years ago. So I see hope in the fact that the Syrian people are very attached to their country, are very attached to the fact that we are a mosaic country. People want to keep that. They're committed to pluralism. I think that they understand today more than never before that we should not think that it's possible to live with the Muslims without respect, love, religious consideration. We cannot be living with others without a religious and theological consideration of the weight and the role of these people in the history of salvation. I think as a Catholic, the Muslim has the same problem. How to receive, to welcome the presence of Christians and Jews in the region as part of his theological vision. We are aware more than never before that if we are not inclusive, although faithful to our conventions, we will not be constructive and positive in the coming equilibrium of our societies. So Syria is suffering enormously, but nevertheless people are plenty of hope. They want to have a democratic Syria where the will to be together, does not come from up or from out. It is really spring from inside, from the souls of people.
Across Rome, Caritas International is organising aid for refugees from Syria of all faiths as they cross the border into an unknown future.
I recently visited Lebanon and Jordan to see the Syrian refugee crisis there, and I saw many, many families who had basically fled for their lives. They were fleeing bombs, shooting in the streets, sniper attacks. These were people who for months had been basically hiding in their houses, afraid even to go out for groceries. Even getting groceries was hard. Keeping their kids home from school, a lot of times school was simply stopped. So these were people who were sort of waiting out the violence in Syria and finally just gave up and realized they were in danger, their children's lives were in danger. And so by bus or by car or even on foot, they went to neighboring countries like Lebanon and Jordan. Within Syria, Caritas is distributing food. It's been a little hard in terms of providing cooked food because it's hard even to get fuel in Syria. But we're providing things like sandwiches. Boy Scouts are distributing some of the food in Aleppo and homes. In Jordan, we're providing a number of services, food, medical care, things like diapers and blankets. So Caritas Jordan is providing these basically emergency items to families who have just shown up in the country with nothing. In Lebanon, we're also providing food and things like blankets, but also we have a sort of roving medical van. So the doctor goes around in this big white van and takes care of Syrian refugee children.
Nearly 200,000 people have been displaced by the conflict. Hope for a new future is mixed, therefore, with heart-wrenching stories.
One woman who came into the Caritas Jordan Center had escaped from Syria. She had epilepsy, several of her children had epilepsy, and she showed me her wound in her leg. She had been shot by a sniper. Her neighbor had gone out to get milk for her family. She had wanted to go and get milk. Her neighbor said, no, it's too dangerous. He went. He got shot by a sniper. She went out to try and help him. She was shot. She survived. He didn't. So she took her children and escaped to Jordan, and now Caritas Jordan is helping her. And hopefully we'll be able to provide some medical care especially for her daughter's epilepsy. Her daughter has the worst case of epilepsy within the family.
Over 5 million people visited this place last year. It's the Vatican Museums. Interestingly enough, for the first time ever, in August, the museums put a different type of guide at the visitor's disposal. That is, the spiritual sort.
I stay here and many people come around and when they see a priest around at their disposition, they are very happy and they ask some questions regarding to what they see here, deeper meaning in some of the artworks here. And some of them use the opportunity to share some other things that are particular regarding their spiritual life. Most of the people who come are people who have been alienated somehow from the faith, either because they are divorced or because of their way of life, they have stopped coming to church for a long time. So when they see a priest in a place they didn't expect to see a priest, they like to take the advantage. You see, when people come here, most of the people are amazed by the beauty, the richness, how the earliest Christians were able to articulate their faith in art. And these artworks have particular power to express a lot that we may not be able to write down. You can't exhaust the rich meaning of many of the things you see here. Personally, I'm enriched personally from these things because it has aroused a lot of interest in me also to deepen my knowledge on the relationship between art and faith, for instance. And I think Christianity has contributed so much to arts and architecture.
There were actually 2 priests available to speak for 4 hours each morning. They both were impressed by the quality of their conversations.
The experience is very well received and appreciated by visitors. Something that has really touched me is that the visitors to the museums are very happy with their visit. I found an atmosphere that is inviting and available to listen to their requests and demands. There are so many themes that are spoken of. We might speak of art and faith, or of economics and faith. Some people come to share their experiences or difficulties in their personal, professional, or family lives. The most special experience I've had is that a woman came up to me to confess after many, many years. After her confession, she began crying. She found Christ, in one way or another, also here, in this place.
The success of this year's venture, there's hope that in 2013 it will take on greater dimensions.